Hi, I'm Rachel here with Missy, hoping she'll stay with us as I return to the Author's Answer series. The Author's Answer series was started by J.D. Archer and his writing group, where they posed and answered questions about reading and writing. I will link to J.D. Archer's playlist down below, as well as my own. I answer one of these videos, or prompts, in a video form per month. And I am on to question number 27. Which is to talk about history changing books. This feels like a chicken or the egg question, really, as in, is it books that change history or history that changes books? Also, I'm kind of stalling for time here because I think JD's answer kind of covered all the bases. He talked about religious books and books that were about our biggest scientific revelations. So I had to wait for some special inspiration for this prompt. And I got it a couple of weeks ago when the Jewish Telegraphic Agency published an article about the death of the final survivor of the Sobibor concentration camp of the Holocaust. And I know on its surface this is maybe an uplifting story about how, the Nazis tried to kill this man, but instead he lived a long life, hopefully a happy one. But it also got me to thinking about how the Holocaust is drifting out of living memory. And ergo, books are going to become more and more important in pinning down that history. So I felt like this was a way into the question. Also, on the day that I'm filming this is the 90th anniversary of Anne Frank's birth. So that also felt appropriate to finally get into answering this question. The Diary of Anne Frank was one of the first Holocaust-adjacent books to be published. It was published in the 1950s by her father. For a long time, at least for a few decades after the Holocaust, it took some time to be able to be honest openly in public discourse. I mean, there were trailblazers who wrote about it early, but it took a little while for the subject to become generally comfortable. So a couple of the other trailblazers I thought I might mention would be Elie Wiesel, who especially was well known as a survivor in America. He wrote Night, he published Night in 1960, and he was playing around with that memoir for a little bit of time before that, but it took him some time after his experience to be able to truly grapple with it, I believe. And elsewhere, there's the Italian survivor Primo Levi, who actually wrote his memoir, Survival in Auschwitz, very early. It was published first in 1947. Another aspect to this question, specifically in this case, and particularly with survivors dying and the Holocaust leaving living memory, is the question of denial. Speaking of changing history, maybe not in the most optimistic way, but there are books and scholarship that speak out against revisionism and forgetting the past, and perhaps the most famous one of those is Holocaust historian Deborah Lipstadt's History on Trial, My Day in Court with a Holocaust Denier, which was turned recently into a movie starring Rachel Weisz. So it feels like we're in an interesting place right now, I guess, with Holocaust literature, in that it took a little while for people to open up on a large scale about what happened to them, what survivors to open up, and also the descendants to open up about life with survivors and with the Holocaust looming over them. In the past few decades at least, there's been a slew of different types of books, memoirs, fiction, nonfiction, about people grappling with this subject who are directly or indirectly involved. But now we're facing the reality of survivors dying out and the need for their stories to live on in a more permanent form than word of mouth. So I thought to conclude this video, I'd point to a podcast. The Jewish Women's Archive does a monthly podcast, and on their recent one, they interviewed a survivor, Irene Butter, who incidentally actually knew Anne Frank both in and out of the camps. But anyway, she recently published her own memoir, Shores Beyond Shores, and they talked about that in the podcast down below. And I'll also link to the article about the Sobibor survivor, or his obituary to be more precise. Well, that about covers it for me now, but to end on a more lighthearted note, I recently spoke with my mother about my short story, and she defies all stereotypes about your relatives being bad critique partners because they just gush blindly over your work. She offered me a lot of good feedback, and I just want to tweak a scene and a couple of things, and then I think I'm ready to send it off to the contest I wrote it for, so... So yeah, keep writing everyone. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.